Well, we're ready to start Unit 4, which is working with layers. Remember that separate layers allow you to retain total control of the placement and all the various effects. So we want to make sure to create and keep items on separate layers. So to start with, I need you to open a file called Bevel. It's a PSD file. Go to File, Open, and follow the path to your share drive into the Wolbert folder for your hour. Within Photoshop, you'll find the Pictures directory, and within that folder, Unit 4 Layers. Now, within the Unit 4 Layers folder, you will find Bevel PSD. Please open that. Now that you have Bevel open, the first thing we want to do is we don't really want to use this file in case anybody saves over it to the share drive. So we want to duplicate the file just from the get-go. So we're going to say Image, Duplicate, say Bevel Copy, fine, say OK. Now if you pull that down, you see that there is a bevel and a bevel copy. I want you to close the normal bevel. So what you have left is bevel copy. Wonderful. All right, now let's go ahead and get going. Now the first thing is, notice on your far right Layers panel, this palette has a number of different items. Notice that if you turn on the eye on the top layer, you get a different look to the word bevel. This is a show hide basically on the layers. You have a little picture that identifies what is on that layer. It's a layer thumbnail. Then you also have some special effects. These are called layer effects. If you click the arrow down, it opens up the layer effects. So this layer 2 has a drop shadow on it. We can then collapse it by just clicking the arrow again. So if you can see layer 3, that has the gradient overlay and the stroke special effects to it. And then here's text items. Let's see what kind of text items we're talking about here. First one has a drop shadow and bevel and emboss. And the next one has a color overlay. And then finally, if we could explore a little bit farther, we have a layer 4, and that special effect is a pattern overlay. And finally, the background layer, which actually, see these ridges? That's part of the background. Now that you know what you have and what each of these items are, now let's go ahead and play with this a little bit. Okay, first things first. We've already duplicated our layer. And now we're going to copy a layer between images. In order to do that, what we're going to do, this particular image, if we say image size, we see that it's 581 by 198 in terms of width and height. Let's cancel that and remember it, 581 by 198. We're going to do a File, New, and we can just call this Play. We're playing with the bevel layer, and the width is 581 and the height is 198. Everything else we can keep the same normal settings. Say OK. Now we have 2 different files open. And now let's tile these by clicking Window, Arrange, Tile. And it nicely puts one right on top of the other. All right, now hopefully you are doing every step with me. Hopefully you have opened Bevel, you have made a play file, you have tiled them, and you're good to go. All right, now the first thing we're going to do is we can actually duplicate. First you have to be on your Bevel copy file. Go to your background layer and click it. If we right click this, notice we can duplicate the layer. If you do that, to go ahead and say duplicate layer, it will say as a copy. And where do you want it to go to? Well, we don't want to go back into Bevel copy. We want it to go to our new play file that we have here. So again, this is very important that you change your destination after duplicating to the document play. Say OK. And now the background, can you see the ridges in it? And it's deep blue, is duplicated to this file. Now there's another way we could do it. So let's go up in our history, go back up to the original file. Oh, pardon me. I'll undo that. I'm going to go to this file and go back in history on the play file so it's completely empty. Toggle back to your bevel copy, and here's a different way we could duplicate. I want you to grab the background layer and just drag and drop it. Notice it got black. But notice when I just drag and drop, it can get off centered. See the white around it? Now let's undo that. Control Z, or go back in your history. Again, we go back to bevel copy. This time when you drag and drop, I want you to hold down your Shift key. Hold down Shift, drag, drop, and notice it pastes it in place. Again, what we had to do is hold down Shift, drag and drop, and then we're good to go. Okay, so now we have duplicated a layer on the background layer onto play. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is, now that you've duplicated it, I want you to delete the old background layer. Let's see if you can delete it with the lock on. Delete it? Why, yes, you can. Okay, now we're ready to go on to how to produce a new fill layer. We have our background layer already named background. Now let's go down, and there's a little icon that looks like a half moon. If you point to it, sometimes it will say new fill layer, but if it doesn't say that, just click it and go up to pattern, because we could do patterns, gradient, and solids. We could do an adjustment layer with levels all the way down through posterize, but today we're just going to do a fill layer, which will be either pattern, gradient, or solid. Choose pattern, and what pattern we're going to choose today is going to be satin, which is the top right. Select and say OK. Now notice that we need to move this pattern layer underneath our background layer, so let's drag and drop that. And you're thinking, that makes no sense at all. The background layer is completely solid. We can't see our pattern. Well, let's clear that up right now. Let's go ahead and do the background layer at a 70% opacity. So click in to your layers palette and change your opacity to approximately 70. Now that you've done that, you can see your pattern beneath your background layer. Now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a different way that you could actually send to the back. Let's suppose we wanted our background layer but underneath our pattern layer. If you go to Layer, Arrange, you can say, okay, I want to send this to the back, and send it to the back from here. And notice it's the same thing as dragging and dropping, but it's another way to do it. Let's reverse that action. Let's do Layer, Arrange again, and let's bring it to the front. Just another way. You can drag and drop whatever way you like. Okay, now we're going to talk about blending modes. In order to do a blending mode, you normally have a layer that is more of a solid on top of some type of layer that's more of a pattern, such as what we have. Click on your background layer, go up to the word normal and point. It says set the blending mode for the layer. So what we're next doing is blending modes. So let's go ahead and click on the down arrow, and let's say, okay, we want the blending mode to be a pin light. Now that we have a pin light, we can see the difference of the pattern underneath the background. Let's try vivid light. Let's do that again. And here we go, vivid light. Ooh, I like that. I'm going to keep it at that. You can keep exploring on your own if you desire, but don't spend too much time. There's still more to go. All right, so basically that's what a blending mode is. Now let's revert back to our bevel copy. Within the bevel copy, first thing I'd like you to learn is how to make a layer set, which is basically a folder where you keep different items. For example, if I wanted to put a layer set for the text, I'm going to, first off, go to the text that's for bevel. And by the way, right now we are working on the bevel file. So let's go ahead and go to the icon at the bottom of the palette that says create a new set. Click it, and it says set 1. We're going to change that to say text. So change yours to say text. Now you have to drag the two text items, which are the orange T areas, into the text set. You click on the first T, you drag it right until the word text is highlighted and drop. You do the same thing with the word transparent. Click onto the T, drag, drop until the word text is selected. There we go. Now we have a layer set. If you collapse the set, you'll see that both of them are hidden within the folder. It's just an easier way to see, and it just organizes everything. Next, let's talk about linking within the set. If I get my move button right now and I were to move the word bevel, it moves that portion of bevel all on its own. Let's undo that. We don't want that. Let's suppose I want to move all the text at once. First off, let's click off layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3. Now we're left only with the text items. What I'd like you to do is click on the link and watch what happens. So we have transport selected. We can't click on that because it's selected. So you notice that when I selected bevel, it flip-flopped with the linked item. So now when I have my move and I grab it, it moves both of them. This is an easy way when you use the link to move both items and also to do alignments. Let's go ahead and click undo on the move so it goes back to the original way we had it. Now go to layer and let's go ahead and arrange our layer. Oh, my apologies. We don't want to arrange the layer. We want to align it. Let's see if the align command is being given to us. Oh, it's not. So that means that I need to adjust something first. It's not linked anymore. I have to click this. I'm going to go to layer. Now I have align linked. I'm going to say, for example, what if I wanted both at the horizontal center? Click it and it shows what the horizontal center are of the two items. But again, I could do layer, align linked. Again, they have to be linked to do this. And I could say, okay, left edges, and they left align, both at the left edges, and I could put it where I want it. Now I'm going to undo both of those until it's back to its original. And now you're ready to go on to the next portion, which is learning with the Super Splash Kids how to define patterns. Okay, now to Super Splash. What we need to do is open the Super Splash Kids file. You say File, Open, and again navigate to your S drive. Make sure you go to Wolbert to your appropriate hour within Photoshop. Within the pictures, within Unit 4 Layers, you will find Super Splash Kids JPEG. Open that up. Now what we want to do with this is we want to define a pattern. So let's choose the planks first. Go to your regular rectangular marquee, select it, and select a pattern in the lower right-hand corner of the Super Splash JPEG. Now that we have a pattern selected, let's go to Edit, Define Pattern. Just like when we were defining a brush, we did Edit, Define Brush. Well, this time it's Pattern. Let's call this Planks 1. All right, and say OK. Now let's go ahead and minimize our Super Splash Kids picture. And let's go ahead and add a new layer to a new fill layer to our bevel. So let's make sure we're on the bevel file. Let's go all the way down, click on the background layer. And for the new fill layer, remember that what we do is we click on the half moon and we say we want a pattern, and we choose our Planks 1. It should be in the lower right-hand corner. Double click it, say OK, and now we have our pattern for Planks 1. Now, what we do want to do is click off the eye for the background, and instead keep the eye for our pattern in place. Now this layer 4 appears that it might be affecting things a bit. So let's click off the layer 4, and there we can see how the bevel pattern works in even a little bit with our text as well. And it changed some of our text. So far, so good. Now what if we didn't like this planky pattern? We thought it was a little bit too much. Well, we can actually change it. But first, let's go in and regenerate a different pattern. This time we're going to use our pattern maker. Okay, open up your Super Splash Kids. Now let's go to Filter, Pattern Maker. Notice I have my selection already made on my Super Splash Kids. When I go to Pattern Maker, it shows the selection, and I go up to Generate and I click it. And it shows some different patterns. Notice each time it says 1 of 1. I generate again, and I can keep doing this until I get to, let's say, 20. But I'm going to find one that I think is a little bit better. I like, let's suppose, this one a little bit better. Well, but if I wasn't sure, well, I can go back and look at the other ones I had. Finally, I'm going to click Save in the bottom preview. I'm going to call this Planks 2. Say OK, and I am not going to click OK on the pattern maker. Instead, oddly enough, you have to click Cancel. If you click OK, you just go back in history. But let's click Cancel, otherwise it will take over our entire picture. Cancel. Okay, minimize Super Splash. Now, let's go ahead and change the layer to put in the new pattern that we generated. So let's go to the pattern layer on bevel, make sure it's selected, and we have to go up to Layer, Change Layer Contents, and Pattern. And click the down arrow and choose the very last pattern, which should be Planks 2, and say OK. Now I have the new pattern inside of my bevel layer. Okay, we're going on. The next thing is we want to do some layer styles, which is so cool. Some of the layer styles, for example, are like the bevel that we've done and whatnot. But just for now, so that we can kind of see some of the regular styles that were there, let's take off our pattern layer. Let's add layer 4 back and add the background layer back on. I'm going to move the pattern layer to the very bottom, or just move background. Well, I have to double click background, and then I can move it up. I have to retype it as the background layer. I just unlocked it by double clicking it, and I'm going to move it up above the pattern layer. Okay, and then I have to put back in view our 3 layers. Okay, so everything is back the way it was. We did the show hide, so we have the eyes for all the layers. We have the pattern layer on the wee bottom, and notice it's not even showing. We have the background layer above the pattern layer. Now, let's just look at the text, like the word transparent. Let's click on the word transparent and click the down arrow by its layer styles. You're going to see it currently just has the cover overlay, and that little F means layer styles. That's the same F that's on the bottom of your layers palette. Let's click the down arrow, and we could choose any style we wanted to here, or we could just go into blending options. Another way that we could do this, can you guess? You just double click the icon, and it will open your layer styles box. So let's just very quickly add, let's see, an inner shadow. Now I have to click on it to see, and I could change different options. Let's suppose we do a bevel and emboss, and within it a texture. And let's suppose we did a gray stroke. So let's do a stroke. You have to click on it where it turns blue. And then you have to go to the color and find the gray. So over here I want a gray stroke and say OK. And now I can see kind of like what the word transparent has changed into with all of those. I kind of like it. So I'm going to say OK. And that's the way that you add layer styles. Very, very cool. Now, the last thing we're going to do with this bevel file is we're going to flatten the image. Go ahead and just close your play layer and say no to save. Close your Super Splash and no to save. Now, with the bevel layer, I want you to notice that down in the left-hand corner, it says the document size is 337K. Well, that's only if it's flattened. With all these different layers, it's 2.28 megs. So Photoshop files take up a lot of room. If in fact you do need to collapse and make them all one layer, there's a few ways you can do it. You could just merge visible layers, like let's say we wanted to merge layers 1, 2, and 3. Punch the eye out of all the other layers. Make sure only layers 1, 2, and 3 are visible. And then you would say layer. And, well, it should say merge. Oh, excuse me, I'm on the wrong layer. I'll click back on layer 1, say layer, and I would say merge visible. And see how it condensed layers 1, 2, and 3 for me. Well, I'm going to go back, undo that, and this time let's put the eyes in all of them again, except the pattern layer. And this time let's just flatten it. Let's say layer, flatten image, discard hidden, okay, and look at it's one layer and it's only now 337. Now that we are done with our bevel layer, we can go ahead and close this file, say no to save, and we're going to start in on some filtering effects. What I want you to open are two different files, one called filter and one called liquify. To do that, you just go to File, Open, and again, you're going to follow to the S drive, to Wolbert, to your hour, Photoshop, within Pictures for Unit 4. This time you have to go into a subfolder called Chapter 09 Lessons, and the two files you open are Filter and Liquify. So open both of those, and then we'll continue on. First, we're going to start with the normal filtering, so let's minimize the liquify, and you're looking at the flowers. So we're going to go ahead and say filter, and there's a filter gallery that we're going to choose from. Notice it opens up into artistic. We could collapse that and see all the different galleries from which we have to choose. Or we could just go ahead and open artistic and say I want the colored pencil look. Or no, I want the fresco look. Or let's say the plastic wrap. Let's go with that. Say OK, and voila, you have a filter. Okay, now that you've done that, minimize it and go over to your liquify and maximize that file. Now to learn the liquify command. So we go up to Filter, Liquify. Now this is really, really cool. But for example, if you say Forward Warp Tool, you go to the tools on the left, click that, and if I wanted to warp down like the middle, I could warp it down. The next tool says Reconstruct, so if I do something I don't like and I've already gone past the undo stage of 1, I can click Reconstruct and have it go back to the way it was. So you can always reconstruct, just remember that. But there's a lot of different ones for you to explore. There's the twirl, there's the pucker, there's the bloat. If I wanted his lips to bloat up a little bit, bloat his little lips. But you can go through these on your own and just see if there's ever any that you may want to use. But it is a pretty cool thing. I'm going to press cancel, and guess what? We are done with this chapter. Now you are onward and upward to the first thing that you'll be doing for this chapter, which is a visionary doorway. After that, guess what? You get to do the CD cover. To find these, you need to open your Unit 4 notes and activities at the share drive. Enjoy!